Hi, I'm Pake Wise, C&E Specialist at the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation. Welcome to our Learn to Hunt series. Today we got Kelly Boyer, and we're going to talk about some postseason scouting. But before we get into that, I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Yeah, my name is Kelly Boyer. I'm a C&E specialist with the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife. I do all of our archery education programs and avid hunter. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Tell me a little more about the program.
So the ODWC hosts a couple different school-based archery programs. One of them is the National Archery in the Schools program, which Oklahoma has a huge presence. We're in over 700 schools in Oklahoma. Thousands of kids get exposed to archery every year because of the efforts that we do partnering with the schools. And then we have an advanced archery program for kind of that next step for our high school kids called Varsity Archery, Oklahoma Varsity Archery, and it's fairly new, but it's budding and it's grabbing a lot of interest and helping kids move to that next stage in archery.
That's awesome, man. We didn't have stuff like that when I was coming up. There was some. I think there might have been some very rudimentary programs like that, but nothing to like what it is now. It's
We've been going over 20 years now within the state with the NAS program, and we have one of the largest programs in the nation, and the kids work hard, and it's really exposing archery out there and getting kids involved in shooting sports, which is a good thing.
fantastic. So, what made you want to kind of get into that?
I've always kind of had a passion for sharing the outdoors. I kind of had a non-traditional path to the outdoors where I didn't have that mentor type person to lead me to it. I kind of figured stuff out for myself.
Hmm.
And I've been doing it nearly 30 years now. So I've always kind of had a passion for sharing my love of the outdoors. And the opportunity came in to do this role, and man, it just really fit with my history in archery and my passion to share it and get youth involved.
Nice, fantastic. So, let's dive into our topic today. Some
Sure.
some postseason scouting. So, what is postseason scouting? I mean, that the title's probably so self-explanatory there, but
It kind of is, but okay. So we're talking about scouting for deer. Postseason scouting is okay. Season's over, or you're tagged out, or you're no longer going to hunt. It's a way you can get into the woods and do some deeper diving investigation into how are the deer using my property.
mhm,
It's kind of boots on the ground truthing conceptions or like thoughts you may have, and proofing them. So it's basically going out after season and seeing how the deer are actually using your property, so that you can make decisions on, do I want to move a stand, or do I want to maybe access it from over here? There's lots of different things that can go into postseason scouting, but it's a good time of year to actually get into your property and see how the deer actually use your property.
so postseason, that's kind of a vague description, I guess. When does postseason become preseason? So, like, is there a window in there that postseason scouting is best? Is it mid-January through April, or is it? I mean, what's the kind of the time frame there that we're dealing with?
So I consider postseason anytime you decide you're done hunting. We kind of typically want to stay out of our hunting areas while we're hunting to limit pressure, to increase our opportunity to harvest an animal.
Mhm.
Correct. So whenever you're done hunting that piece of property, and you want to go out and investigate or do some scouting, that's kind of when the postseason starts. But it's kind of preseason. It's like the preseason,
Yeah.
because as soon as season's over, if you're an avid hunter, you're ready for the next one. But it's definitely a way that you can see the difference between preseason scouting, which is typically summer patterns going
Mhm.
into fall patterns.
Yep.
Deer will behave very differently than they will in, say, pre rut and post rut. Those are glimpses you can get into their behavior, how they're using the land, by doing this scouting directly after season starts.
Mhm.
Um, you can do it directly after season starts. You can do it on later into springtime. there's lots of different methods you can do to postseason scout that'll benefit you for understanding how your property's used.
So that's kind of the unique part of postseason scouting is that you're getting to see deer in their patterns, that those patterns are going to more closely resemble what they are in the fall. Because, like you said, those summer patterns, you can talk to a lot of deer hunters. They go out, look at their property in August, and they're going, "Yeah, these deer are moving through here." And then come end of October, those deer are no longer in that area.
Absolutely. And that's that's one thing that I think we get really excited about preseason scouting, and understanding deer and their behavior at one time of the year. And then we set all of our stands up. We bank on thinking this is how deer are gonna enter or leave,
Mhm.
and then they completely change their pattern, and you don't have the successful season that you've wanted to in the past. Well, getting that glimpse postseason will show you how they're actually using it at the time that you're wanting to hunt, and you can make some really good decisions on where you want to set up, or if your assumptions are correct and that's how they're using it. I'll give an example. I have this one piece of property that I went and I set up early season, really thinking that the deer were going to be using this certain area for to travel from one area of bedding to another area of bedding slash food. And I'd set up this property, and we harvested deer in it, and we saw quite a few deer. But as soon as we were done hunting, I decided to get boots on the ground and go out and just kind of walk around and look, and just over this little knoll, from where I couldn't see from where we had set the setup, I found out I was not correct. Most of the deer activity was crossing in that location. So we decided that summer before the next season, we would move that stand location. We saw 30 to 40% more deer the next year just by scouting in postseason and
Mhm.
understanding how they used it. So that's just an example of how postseason scouting can work.
Yeah, yeah, that's it's always funny. You come into areas like you said with like a preconceived notion of how these deer, and a lot of times if you have a lot of experience hunting, you're going to be somewhat accurate, right?
Yeah.
But you'll never know for sure until you get, like you said, boots on the ground, go over there and verify what you know. And a lot of times you find out, you get over there and go, "Oh, I was wrong."
Yeah, it's not, that's my hunting experience is learning from being wrong. A lot of times, it's how we learn the best is from being wrong. Um, but there's all sorts of things you can discover about your property by accessing it and seeing how deer interact with it that can definitely up your success for subsequent years.
Yep. All right. So what's something we should know beforehand? Like how do we prepare to go do postseason scouting?
Well, there's certainly things I like to take with me when I go postseason scouting. I like to take kind of an image of my property so that I know where I'm at. Um, we kind of want to know what we're looking for. We're looking for travel corridors. We're looking for tracks for well used trails, scrape lines we might have missed, rub lines we might have missed. Those indicators that scraping and rubbing are activities that are uh, pre and rut activity. Those are areas we kind of want to key in on if we're wanting to successfully hunt deer. Um, these are things you may have missed preseason scouting. So,
Mhm.
um, taking a map with you, marking certain locations on that map, and then going back once you're not in the field and looking at those locations and deciding, okay, do I want to move a setup? Do I How do I access that? Because access is another thing that you can figure out better in postseason because you're not so worried about pressuring deer at that time of the year. How can I get in better? How can I get out better without being detected? Um, it kind of helps you to take, a backpack. Make sure you take lots of water because it's a lot of walking. You should walk a lot when you postseason scout. Um, Go ahead and take photos, but just kind of a a good rule of thumb is to slow down, take it all in, make educated decisions.
Yep. And I think something else that could help a lot, um, for pre postseason scouting. So like if you said, "Hey, I'm going out Saturday," spend the 2 or 3 days before Saturday looking at your property online through aerial
Absolutely.
photograph.
Yeah, aerial photos and mapping have come so far. You can really get an idea what your property looks like from imaging that's out there that's free on our website. You can even get to your property and look at it. The aerial that mapping is a big part of scouting nowadays and largely underutilized.
Yep.
Um, but I think it can really help you make decisions on being more successful if you were
Yep.
to try to understand your property better.
Yeah, I always try to, especially if I'm gonna hunt a new area or even an area like we're talking about here, like a property you're fairly familiar with, look at topos. Look at topography of the area you're going to be hunting because that's going to give you a good jump on. Okay, here's where I need to go. Here's a bench or a saddle that I can go check out, and that gives me a starting point, right? So that because I could see where, especially if somebody's fairly new to hunting and they're going, oh, I don't even know where to start. And so these are things you can go, and so you're kind of going in with a game plan, and then you can adjust from there based on what you see. So if you decide I'm going to go sit on this bench um, and try to see what I can find there. Then if you're walking through there and you find a trail, follow that trail, see where it goes, see, and like you said, take notes, take pictures. Hey, if you find a rub or a scrape line or anything like that, make sure you are taking note of that. Also, if you're going to be hunting in a tree stand, take note of trees
Yeah,
that are going to be able to support your stand,
right.
and where they're at in reference to that trail.
You may find that perfect setup
Mhm.
and not ever knew it was there unless you decided to go and access your property, and you're going to get such a better glimpse at how deer use your property at that time of year. You may find the perfect setup, the easiest way in, the perfect
Yep.
tree, and it could really increase your success doing those very things. Another thing I like to do in postseason, and I continue to run trail cameras. I'll hang trail cameras on trails. Hang trail cameras over food sources and stuff like that. Basically, kind of take an inventory.
Mhm.
What's still around? We see a certain amount of deer preseason, and we think, "Oh man, we got all these deer," and then they change that fall pattern,
Mhm.
and then they leave your property, and then you're kind of frustrated. Well, maybe they didn't leave your property. Maybe they just are using your property differently, and they're in this location at that time of year. So, trail camera is another tool that I really like to use for continued on into postseason scouting.
Yep. What are some other tips for scouting in terms of should I go out the same time every day? Should I go out different times? I mean,
For sure. I like to mix it up. I like to go on sunny days. I like to go on cloudy days, just because just the different lighting can give you a different perspective of looking at the exact same thing.
yeah.
You may notice something in some lighting condition, in one lighting condition that you miss in the other. Um, don't just go once and make your decisions based off of that. Um, Another thing that's really helpful in later season is to go when there's snow on.
Mhm.
You get to see the most accurate information of where deer were when there's snow on. You can see their tracks directly after a snow. You can see where they're accessing. This is also another good tip that I like to do for during postseason. Is I like to shed hunt as well.
Yeah.
So to be successful at shed hunting, you got to know where the deer are at that time of the year
Yep.
to help increase your success of shed hunting.
Yeah. Well, and then this always goes back to something that a fundamental truth that I have about hunting, right? And it's anything you can do that it's going to keep you in the woods longer. And so shed hunting is a really good incentive, especially if you're going out there and you're like, man, I've been out here for a couple hours. I'm kind of fading. You can say, well, you know what? I'll just walk trails and see if I can find sheds.
Absolutely. Um, it's a great way to stay engaged. It's a great way to
Yep.
stay into the woods. Um, and it's a great way to learn.
Yep.
A lot of us have kind of these target bucks or these ones we see that during the season maybe we didn't have a chance to harvest or we're giving another year or whatever for. It's always fun to think that maybe you could find that set of antlers that they've dropped. So I like to use shed hunting as kind of a motivation to stay out in the woods and to stay engaged in the property and continue to learn about my land and how animals are using it.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's you'd be shocked at how much further people will walk if there is a prize at the end of that walk. You know what I mean? Where they're going, I'm going to come out and do some scouting, but I'm very much looking for sheds. That will keep you engaged much longer, and you'll cover a lot more ground,
Sure.
and you're gonna find sign that you didn't know was there. I've done that a bunch. Where
And it's something that can happen as early in December
Mhm.
all the way through April.
Yep.
So that's another long period of time to be in the woods and stay connected with your land and continue to learn.
Yeah. Well, and kind of going back to the snow thing you were talking about, that's the most accurate information you can get, especially here in Oklahoma, where the snow does not hang around.
Right.
So you've got a very finite window of where that snow is going to be there and available for tracks to be seen easily.
Absolutely.
So you've got a window of 4 or 5 days. So you know that if you find tracks, you know that those were made in the last day or two, couple days. So you know that, okay, these deer are actively using this right now. Like this is not, I'm not finding a trail that's a month old. This is active and being used currently.
And that's another tactic I like to use with the snow is that say I've gone out beforehand and I've identified a rub line.
Mm-hmm.
And I go back to that rub line during the snow and I see, are there a lot of deer tracks in that area? Well, then I can make the inference that, okay, I've got a rub line. I've got lots of deer tracks, lots of deer sign in this area. This is probably somewhere where deer frequent.
Mm-hmm.
And I can make that assumption and start looking for setups or where are they coming to, where are they coming from.
Yep.
Another thing that postseason scouting, especially in the snow, it makes it easier to find areas where they like to bed.
Yeah.
Bedding locations are some of the best areas you can actively identify because that's areas where the deer feel safe.
Yep.
And they're going to reuse those bedding areas. And that's great information for you to take into the next season.
Yep. Yeah. That's another, yeah. Because typically what I like to do, especially the way I like to hunt, is I like to hunt travel areas. To me, that's where you're going to see the most deer. Maybe not if you have a big ag field, you might be able to see a ton of deer out there. But I archery hunt, so I like to have tight close quarters. And if you can find a heavy trail between a bedding and a feeding area, typically, in my experience, that's going to be a great spot. And so, like you said, being able to identify the bedding area, because everybody probably knows where their feeding areas are for the most part, but not everybody's going to know where those bedding areas are. And so, if you can find those two things, that can help you at least start with, okay, where do I think these deer are going? And then you can go look in that area and see if you're right. If you are, congratulations. If you're not, here's where postseason scouting is really going to help, because that's going to allow you to go, I thought they were here, but they're not. Where are they going? And then you can go in and find that area that you're like, oh, this is where they're moving in the fall and winter.
Exactly. It's all about gathering information, gathering data, and making decisions based on what you find. I found postseason scouting typically makes me more successful on every piece of property I've ever been on because I have more information to go off of
Mm-hmm.
other than what I assume at the wrong time of the year.
Yep.
Doesn't mean I'm not successful, but I think every one of us kind of want to increase that level of success. So postseason scouting is a great way to do it.
Yep. So we were kind of talking about sign. Like how do we interpret different sign? Like how do we, obviously tracks are pretty easy. That's the deer walked that direction.
Right.
How do you interpret rubs and scrapes and bedding? Like how do you take all that information and then combine it into a game plan?
So it all goes back to what I do with that mapping. I'll get on the property. I'll mark where I find a scrape. I'll mark where I find a rub, and then I'm somebody that looks at patterns.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try to find a pattern, and if I find a really heavy pattern of rubs or of scrape lines, that to me tells me this is an area, and deer frequently use the same areas to do the same activity year after year after year. If I want to increase my success of seeing bucks during pre-rut activity, I probably want to focus in on that really good scrape line I found.
Yeah.
Most year scrapes postseason are not going to be active, but
Yep.
you're going to be able to still see them. Your rubs are not going to be active, but you can tell if they're this year's rubs, last year's rubs. And a lot of times when you get in there and find this year's rubs, you'll find last
Yep.
year's rubs and the years before
Yep.
rubs.
I was going to say that.
Again, that's more data that you're gathering that, hey, this is an area where deer are liking to put their sign out to do their pre-rut and rut activity, that you can make an informed decision on how you want to set it up.
Yep. Well, and that's going to lead us into our next thing. So let's say I've gone out, I've done my postseason scouting, I've gathered all this information, right? I now know where the deer are going. I know their bedding areas, I know their feeding areas, areas they like to frequent. How do I then implement that game plan? Like, how do I go in and pick an area? Okay, this is where I want to hang my stand. This is how do I approach it? How do I get in there? All that stuff. How would you go through and do that?
So it's much the same way as I identify the actual sign is, okay, I find a spot where there's lots of sign that I want to hunt. Then I start looking for, okay, where is the optimal setup here? I'm looking at wind directions, prevailing wind directions. I'm looking at, if I'm hunting out of a tree, I'm looking for a safe tree that
Yeah.
I can put a stand in, and I'm looking for access. How do I get in? How do I get out without, because again, you're gathered all this data, you know where the deer are coming from now.
Yep.
You know how to stay out of that area while you're accessing and leaving so that you're not pressuring the deer. So it's all like a puzzle. And you're kind of just putting the puzzle together. Another thing, once I've decided, this is where I want to hunt based off of my postseason scouting, I'm going to go ahead and start making moves to move my stuff there. That way I'm not trying to do it in the summer when it's 18,000 degrees outside,
Yeah.
like it gets here in Oklahoma. But it gives me more time to get something set up. So it's all about like everything else, gathering that information, creating a plan, using that mapping, try it out. Walk into that, see how hard your walk is, see how long it takes you to get there.
Mm-hmm.
It's typically in cooler weather, so you're going to be wearing your heavier clothes. Are you going to get too hot walking in there?
Yeah.
All little pieces of the puzzle you can put together to help you be more successful in subsequent years based off of information you get because you went out postseason scouting.
Yep. And then I think that's you talk about how long it's going to take you to get to your stand. I know there's people out there that like me and are not huge fans of the dark and what may or may not be out there. But that is something that I've always had to take in consideration is a lot of times it takes me a little longer to get somewhere because I stop and listen to every single sound I hear. My walk may only be 200 yards, but it might take me 15 minutes to get there. Just because any twig that I hear snap, I'm going to stop and listen. And so those are things you need to take into consideration.
Absolutely.
As how quickly, like you said, how long it's going to take you to get to your stand. So, and then another good one that I think a lot of people will overlook is, are you walking too fast?
Yeah.
Because there's a few things that happen when you walk fast. You're going to sweat a lot, which puts off a lot of scent. And if there's one thing we all know about deer is you're never going to beat their nose. The other thing is a lot of times when you're walking fast, you're making a lot of noise trying to get in there. So that's something else to consider. So can I get to my stand? I found this spot I want to hunt. I want to hang my stand. How am I getting to it? Am I crossing a wheat field where I'm going to make little to no noise, or am I walking through a leaf litter that's going to make a lot of noise?
I also kind of want to stress this is a time where you can make sure you're safe.
Yep.
Everything is safe about how you're getting there, how you're getting out. We're not crossing any like I'm not having to jump a creek or go across this ravine or any of that. You've got time to figure out what your optimal access is.
Yep.
So that you can, like you said, get in there as scent free as possible, as quiet as possible, but also be safe doing it. Cause I mean, nobody wants to get hurt coming in or going out of a hunting location. That's just going to help you be more successful at getting in your stand and hunt that next year.
Yeah. Just kind of go back, just circle back real quick. I think something else that's helpful during postseason scouting, and it's kind of antithetical to what we've already talked about, where we talk about get your boots on the ground, go walk. The opposite of that is also true, where you go out and just sit, pick a high point with binoculars and sit for 2 or 3 hours and try to. I've done it before where I go out. I may obviously not get there at the same time I am deer hunting, but I try to get there when deer are moving. I want to be set up, ready to go at the same times I'm going to be hunting and watch deer movement at those times. Because if you're a morning hunter and you're only watching in the evening, that's not helping you out a whole lot because a lot of times their patterns are a little different.
Right.
But go sit on a hill 200 or 300 yards away with a pair of binoculars and just watch deer, especially if you're in Western Oklahoma where you got a lot of open areas where you can sit and see for a long ways. That's also I think another great method is just sit and watch. You can learn a lot just watching animals.
Definitely just sit and watch. Not only watch deer activity, watch other animals. Watch the way the wind goes across your landscape. There's a lot of observation you can do without having to move around everywhere. You're absolutely right. Make notes of all that. You may from afar away look at a place that looks appetizing to maybe make a setup. Then when you do put the boots on the ground, you may find out, well, there's no way I can get over there. I've got a place of mine, right? Like I'm literally thinking of it right now that I'd love to get into, but man, it's just so hard to get in across that canyon. But it's postseason scouting isn't just one way to do it.
Yep.
Not just one day of doing it. It's about becoming intimate with the property and how everything interacts with it to make better decisions. You may find out you get it all figured out and you don't have to move anything. Great.
You got lucky.
But it's never a bad thing to get more information. And it's never a bad thing to be in the woods.
No, never. I think another point that needs to be made is the size of the property you're going to be hunting shouldn't affect really the way you scout.
No,
in the sense of you're going to scout a 10-acre property the same way you're going to scout a 1,000-acre property, right? You're still going to, it won't take you as long. Right. You can cover a lot more. You can cover that 10 acres a lot quicker than you can cover 1,000. But the reason I say that is where I hunt right now, my parents bought 10 acres 5 or 6 years ago, and that's where we hunt. We spend so much time in the spring and fall or late summer looking at stuff, looking at trails, looking at tracks, and we move stands every single year because we think we can. There's a trail over here that we didn't know about, and that's on 10 acres.
Yeah,
it's not. I mean, like I went out last night and was taking and looking for trails. Went and took some pictures and stuff. It took me 30 minutes to cover the property. Now, if I didn't know the property, it would have probably taken me a little longer, but I've hunted it for 5 years. But you can go in, if I don't want people to think, well, I'm only hunting 30, 40 acres. That's fine.
It's all more information you can get on your small piece of property.
Exactly.
I tend to hunt bigger tracts of property. And the way I go about that is I'll grid it off. I'll focus on this area because I know I can access that area.
Yep.
Probably the easiest. Could deer be using some of those other? Yeah, I can look at that at another time. But using a grid system to cover a larger piece of properties is a way I do that.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Actually, now that I think about it, I could see where, especially if you were new to hunting, you're saying, well, I want to scout, but I'm hunting a massive chunk of property. I don't know where to start. And
start small.
Yep. That's a great idea. Take your property and cordon it off and say, well, I'm going to do this 200 acre chunk this weekend. And then you scout it for a couple weekends and then go to another 200 acre chunk.
And you're never going to get it figured out the first time. You're never, it's a constant evolving thing. Your learning has to be constantly evolving. The way they interact with the land is going to evolve. There's all sorts of factors into it. So start small.
Yep.
You're not going to figure it all out at one time, and just make the decision you think is best for you. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. It's just an opportunity that a lot of people don't think about. They think, oh, well, season's over.
Yep.
Hunting's over. Yep. Well, not necessarily. You can prepare for the next year at a really good opportunity time of the year.
Yep. I think that's a good point there is that, learning how to hunt doesn't end after the hunt.
Absolutely.
It's an everyday, year-round process of there's always something out there that you can learn to do that's going to make you that one more step closer to being successful.
Sure.
I think we've covered pretty much everything I think that I can think of for postseason scouting. Let's close it. I like to close this way. What's a good hunting story that you want to tell?
Oh man, I've been doing this a while. One that comes to mind is probably one of the hunts that means a lot to me, and it was one of my first spot and stocks on a piece of property that I had. I had gone out and I've kind of had scouted this area. I don't have any stands in that location because it's not real easy to get into. So I decided I'd try to do some spot and stock, and I got high, I glassed, I found an animal that I wanted to go after, and it worked out. Everything worked out perfect, and I wound up being able to get real close and having a real good clean kill. And it's one of those rare times that everything worked out perfectly. But it's one of my good memories, just because it was just me out there. It was my ability to understand the land and how the animals were using it and be successful.
Great.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. I'm glad you came out and decided to talk to us about this.
For sure.
So, thank you, everybody at home, for joining us today. I hope you learned something new about postseason scouting. Like and subscribe. Check out our other episodes, and thank you.